Nobodies.
All right, we're rolling.
All right.
Cheers, dude.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this has been a long time since it.
I know we talked about like
I think we
the
talked
beginning
about
of
like
last year
when I met you, or like maybe not when I met you, but after we were like friends. Then
yeah, no, it was like after, yeah, it was a little while after, I think, Connection, and the last time I went to Connection was like 2 years ago, so it's definitely been over
that
a
was
year.
the last time too for me.
Yeah, you didn't go this last year?
Yeah,
Yeah. I had to take a year off.
Yeah, well, I've only been twice.
Are you gonna go this year?
I don't know.
You should. It's the 10-year anniversary.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
I thought they were going 10-year for Connection because it was a different name before.
No, it's it was supposed to already be 10 years, but they didn't have the COVID one or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why I think last year was technically 10 years, but it was only the 9th one they've done.
I got you. Yeah. I haven't really thought about it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go.
It's a good time to start thinking about it.
What, June, July?
Yeah, it's always like the spring solstice. So June 21st, like that weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first year was so much hotter than the second year. I don't know why. It was just like, I remember like about to go, and I'm like, dude, it is 105.
Was that the year prior to so
the year before I met you, I think.
Yeah, we were actually at Sonic Bloom during that festival. Like that's why we didn't go, is because it was the same weekend.
Okay.
It always is.
Yeah.
And I think that was the year that kid from Colorado that came over and died or whatever.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, because it was like over 110 degrees.
Yeah.
And he got heat stroke or something. And
dude, last year was wasn't there? Well, there was the one in Sawtooth Music Festival. I think they were at the same time, or maybe it was the year before.
Sawtooth Valley Gathering.
But then there was one, or maybe it was last year that they had the one in the Gorge.
That was the year that we went when there was the shooting.
Yeah, the shooting. That was the year we went.
That was 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah, that was nuts. And like I knew some people that went there and didn't go to Connection. And then when I heard about that, I was like, oh fuck, like. But
glad I didn't go there. I still haven't even been to the Gorge.
Yeah, I still haven't been during a shooting.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Have you been to the Gorge though?
All
right.
No, I've been wanting to. The Gorge and then Red Rocks has still never been.
Definitely.
Have you been to Red Rocks?
No, not at all.
I hear it's like the best venue in the States. And I just, like every year I'll like look at different bands. I'm like, okay, this is the one to go to. Or like for me, because I want to see like something I really love too. And this last year I looked and fucking one of my favorite bands, Manchester Orchestra, was touring with Jimmy Eat World.
Oh, really?
And they were playing the Gorge. And I was like, holy fuck. And so I was like, these are the ones to do. And then it happened to be the same weekend as this charity event that I like work for every year in Toronto, or not Toronto, Vancouver. And I was like, God damn it. So I didn't go.
Yeah, I think Tipper is throwing a 4th of July festival at the Gorge this year. I don't know if you're big into Tipper. It's
I don't even think I've ever heard
oh
of
man, it's like weird, glitchy, like very alien sounding, like EDM music.
Okay.
Like he has like a weird kind of cult following.
Yeah.
Like Bass Nectar did for a little while.
Yeah.
Like the kids, it's a lot. You'll never smell as much DMT in a crowd unless it's a Tipper show. Like
No way.
and kids will bring up blow up couches and they'll just sit there and they'll just like listen. It's like it's just like weird, and they just smoke DMT to it the whole time.
Oh my God.
It's weird.
Dude, I don't know if that's bothering you, but you can slide that chair forward, that little thing behind you.
That's fine.
Yeah, my fake plant.
Are they all fake?
No, that
that's
one's
not.
fake. These ones are real.
Oh.
I sometimes move a few in here just for the podcast, but then I've been leaving them in here because the one cat Momo just keeps eating the fuck out of this plant. And so like this plant's just getting destroyed.
They use it to floss their teeth. My cat
really?
does the same thing on certain ones.
Yeah,
Like
you guys have playing games strong at your house.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Well, so we actually so my dad passed in September.
Oh no.
Yeah, unfortunately. Like he was sick for a long time. He had one lung because of mesothelioma, and then like for 12 or 14 years or something. Like that's how long it had been since he got his lung removed.
Yeah, oh shit.
But he like smoked cigarettes and weed and continued to smoke cigarettes and weed for like 10 years afterwards, only having one lung. And then he only stopped because he pretty much couldn't breathe. Like he was like, yeah. And so it was really rough seeing him at the end.
Yeah.
But you're like, God, you sealed your own fate.
Right, yeah.
We told you to stop smoking for a long time.
Yeah, there are people that, I mean, are just, I mean, if your dad's anything like my dad, people are just stubborn.
Yeah.
You know, for one. I mean, also, that's a hard habit to kick.
For sure.
But, you know, even when it's just like, dude, you will die. And they're just like, I'd rather take this and die early than not smoke or whatever. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, until they start to go through that.
Yeah.
Like my mother-in-law, she died from liver cirrhosis. And but she continued to drink until the end. And then like, yeah, it's just like that was probably one of the worst deaths that you could have went through when your liver fails and then you can't process any toxins and like,
oh my God.
Yeah, but we still, it's like, choose to do these things.
Yeah. Fuck. That was I researched liver cirrhosis maybe, what was it, 3 years ago? And it happened to be on my birthday weekend. I had been trying to think about quitting alcohol for a while. And I might have already told the story, but I'm just like, we're up in Coeur d'Alene, me and Cinder are up there. And I was like, she was in the shower and I'm just like Googling like, you know, what happens if you drink too much? And then I just like went down the rabbit hole. It's like, oh no. Yeah. And so like she gets out of the shower. I was like, when we get back home, I'm quitting alcohol. I'm going 3 months or whatever.
Yeah.
I ended up doing 100 days sober then. But But that was my first kickoff of like starting to at least take breaks from it. And so since then, I've like taken a break every year.
That's good.
Now I'm trying to take multiple breaks. I'm like, because I still can't go sober for 3 months and then drink like a fish for 9. That's still not a good thing either, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been hard for me to stop drinking even for like a little bit because it's like I was a fucking drug addict for so long.
Yeah.
And so I've been really good about not doing drugs.
Yeah.
But I still like
you gotta get something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. I like we were talking off, but like I don't think I've ever really had a drug problem. I mean, when I bartend, I mean, I talk about like me doing drugs openly. Like I don't like think it's a bad thing to do it here and there, but it's like definitely catches you if you're doing it all the time.
Or selling
what's that?
Or selling it like I was.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Oh, fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you always have it, like you're saying.
Exactly.
But like I do it here and there. Yeah, I guess I mean the only thing I sold was weed, but smoking weed all the time really has no problem.
You just eat too much.
And I don't sell alcohol, but I still do it all the time. But yeah, like I just, especially when I quit the bar, I mean, even like working at Rudy's, the spot I work at, my alcohol intake started going up and up because they encourage, you know, I have a couple drinks per shift. And then it's just like, so then I started drinking every shift versus other jobs that you weren't allowed to drink. So I was only drinking on days off and stuff. And then, so it just got more and more. And then when I quit to go full-time photo video and like the stress and work. And so I was just like, start drinking more and more. I got to a point where like I'd buy a whole gallon or a half gallon of alcohol and it would be gone in 2 days by myself.
See, I don't really drink liquor. I just drink beer. And that's why I'm chubby. It's because I just drink PBRs. I go to a bar and I'll sit and drink $3 PBRs and I'll have like 5 or 6 of them. I'm like, oh, I'm not even drunk. Right. I'm just drinking empty calories.
Yeah, well, PBRs are the heaviest, dude. When I did keto, I looked up like the carb counts of different beers. And PBRs are like 15 or 18 carbs. And obviously that's empty per beer. Because I used to drink them. And I'm like, holy shit, if I drink 10 of these, like that's 150 carbs on top of all of my diet, you know?
Yeah, I understand why I'm still fat. I've been trying to like run a bunch and like be more active. And I'm like, I've lost like 10 pounds.
Yeah. Well, that's so good, dude.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, switching to seltzers helps. I mean, like I before seltzers were out, I switched to Natty Lights because they're like 2 carbs.
Oh, okay.
And so it's light. And at first, when you drink it compared to a PBR, you're like, ugh. It's like so light.
Yeah.
But then I realized I got used to it. And then when I would drink a PBR, I was like, ugh, it's so heavy. Really? You know, so you kind of get, like, you just have to get used to it. And then, but then I'm like, holy shit, I'm saving 15 carbs per beer.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, especially how much beer I was drinking.
Yeah.
And the same with seltzers, I think they're like 2 or 3.
Nice. Yeah, I remember I was drinking a bunch of Modelo's one year. This was like 2, maybe 3 years ago. I met like, I think Cinda was there. I met a bunch of people at what's the hot springs out towards Hagerman?
Miracle. Yeah.
Yeah, and somebody had like a private tub or whatever, and I went, and it's like everyone was drinking, but they were drinking seltzers, and then I showed up with like a pack of Modelo, and I had a belly, and I was like, I see what I'm doing wrong here. So,
dude, there was this time we were boating maybe 2 years ago. I used to hang out with a bunch of Mexicans, and 2 or 3 of them had boats, and so such a fun crew. And so I brought a big rack of beers, and everybody else drinks seltzers for the most part. And then they have this tie up where like all the boats tie up on a Sunday, and everyone's just partying and stuff. And so we went through all the seltzers, and I remember this cute girl that I was flirting with, and she was just like, hey, will you give me a seltzer? And I like look in, and I'm just like, we just have beers left. And she's like, beer? Who drinks beer? And I was just like, does this mean I'm old? Because I like beer. Because it does seem like all like the younger generation is just all seltzers. And then almost every girl I like hang out with or
only drink seltzers. Yeah, for sure.
And then I started drinking seltzers because it's just everybody drank seltzers. So you're just like, all right.
Yeah, I just wish that they like sold better ones. Like Topo Chicos they're still like they're better, but they're not like the best. I don't know. It's like there's still a bunch of sugar and other shit in them. But like you go anywhere and it's like, oh, we have White Claw. I was like, White Claw sucks.
Yeah, and White Claw sucks, but I end up drinking that the most because everybody drinks it the most. But it's just like a little bit of flavor, and there's not really anything else going on. So it's just something to drink, but it's just like fizz. Like, fizz.
I've heard somebody who's like, yeah, it tastes like static. And I'm like, that makes sense.
That's good. Do you like High Noons at all?
They're all right. Their malt liquor is the problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's like they're like, oh, it's like alcohol in there, but it's like you look, it's made with malt liquor.
Yeah.
And so
malt liquor is worse for you than like the ones made with because White Claws are like vodka based.
I think so, but I don't know anymore. I feel like maybe they started like that, and now all of them are malt liquor. Like,
there are peach. Yeah, they might say on that. Because that came out of...
It just says alcohol. See, it doesn't even like tell you. You have to like probably look.
There are some High Noons now because I think some of the High Noons were vodka based. Maybe I'm wrong, but they did come out with some High Noons that are tequila based.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can taste the tequila.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't even know how like in the States where you can not sell liquor at gas stations, but you can still sell these things that have tequila.
Well, it's like if it's below like a certain percentage. That's like how like if you go to Walmart, they have like Jose Cuervo, but it's like the premix.
Yeah.
And so it's below
like
a certain point, and then that's why they can sell it there.
Yeah.
So it's probably the same.
It's so funny, the little workarounds.
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah, I would drink some High. I basically drink whatever the group wants. Like I'm a cheap.
Yeah.
When it comes to my drinking, I'm like, oh, what are you guys drinking? Okay, I'll have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that if I come into a party and I'm like, sweet, I brought Natty Lights, everybody's like, dude, what the fuck, man? We're not gonna drink that. I'm like,
or Michelob Ultra.
Yeah, those are super light. Those are like 2.5 grams of carbs, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I during Christmas or on Christmas Day or the day before, it's gonna be me, Cinda, and Jazz, my roommate.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were like, well, let's go get we're gonna get Papa Murphy's. We'll have something for the day, and then we got some like frozen Chinese food to like make. And so we ended up taking acid on Christmas Day.
Nice,
which is starting to be a tradition. I've done it quite a few times. Yeah, and it's just like friends and stuff, and we just trip out and go on hikes or walks and watch the movies.
That sounds cool.
And we drank a bunch of White Claws, but so I asked Jazz. I'm like, what kind of pizza do you want? And she's like, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm like, you're sure? Like, I'll get whatever. She's like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm like, okay. So I like look at Papa Murphy's, and they have this like sweet Thai chili chicken. I'm like, and they have a bunch of others, but I'm like, dude, this sounds awesome. So I get this and throw it in the fridge. Well, then like, it's 8:00 at night. We want pizza, and then I put it in, and then she's like, is there like spice in this? And I was like, yeah, it's like a sweet Thai chicken. She's like, why would you get that? And I was just like, dude, you said get whatever.
Yeah, but she's expecting like pepperoni or like not like some fusion pizza she's never even had before.
Dude, and so like both her and this guy Brad, they like didn't love it at all, and so they like made something else, and I was like, you could have picked. But yeah, so I'm like, this is why I don't decide when it comes to
Yeah.
group things, because I always pick the wrong thing.
Yeah, I always pick spicy stuff.
Yeah.
And people don't like spice the way I do.
I love spicy
Yeah.
shit.
I eat like habaneros and shit and like
Just like plainer.
well, I put them on a lot of stuff. I actually
Yeah.
like I grew a bunch of habaneros this year and make like I make a lacto fermented hot sauce.
Ooh.
And so if you do it's called a baker's percentage. And so if you take the weight of whatever you're going to it's like a ferment.
Mm-hmm.
So lactobacillialis is the enzyme that ferments food into pickles. It is it's a anaerobic bacteria, which means it thrives in an oxygen-less environment.
Okay.
But you have to have a certain salt content. Otherwise, other anaerobic bacteria, harmful anaerobic bacteria, will also thrive in there. And so what you do is you take like the weights. You take like a jar of whatever you want to like pickle or your peppers, like habaneros. It's like I put like adobo chilies, garlic cloves, carrots to tone it down and add some sweetness, and then a bunch of habanero peppers in there. And then you dump in the water so it covers it, and then you weigh that. And 2% of the weight is your salt content.
Okay.
And then you dump the water into a pot. You bring it, like you heat it up, and you put the salt in there, dissolve the salt, and then put it back in there, and then close it and let it ferment in a jar for like a week or two.
Okay.
And so that's the lacto ferment, and it's yeah, and that's like the best way. That's how like most pickles. So it creates like more like probiotic bacterias or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the same thing that's in kimchi or whatever.
Right.
They're more probiotic if you do it that way instead of like with the vinegar, like quick pickles.
Yeah.
A lot of people just do quick pickles with like vinegar, like the vinegar and sugar and a little bit of salt or whatever. But that's not like it doesn't allow that bacteria to grow and so.
So then is it is it a paste or something then?
So afterwards, it's like I take out the liquid, I save it because you use a little bit for the blending process, and you just throw it in a blender and just blend it up to like the consistency that you want.
Yeah.
And you use a little bit of the liquid, so it has like the right salt contents, and I mean, and then from there you can add other things, like you can add fresh cilantro and lime and what.
Sure. Yeah. So then you can make your hot sauces or yeah, dude. How do I get some of that?
I have some. I can.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's like, fuck. That's intense. Like just the process and stuff.
It's really easy though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a garden then, right?
I have a garden everywhere I go. Like everywhere I live. Like, and so I was saying like my dad passed away. And so since then we've actually like, we remodeled the house that I grew up in Nampa. My mom still lives there or whatever. Okay. And we like gutted the whole house. Well, we repainted. I pulled off all the trim because it had like traditional, like the weird like like old shitty looking like door frames and baseboards, and so we pulled all of that out. That's what I do. I do finished carpentry.
Okay.
And so we pulled all of that out. There was like this dumb closet that was by the front door the front door has like a window on both sides, but there was a closet over one of them.
That's weird.
Yeah. And it was just like, and so we like opened it up. I ripped that closet out. We put hardwood throughout the entire house, repainted, redid all the trim, reset the doors, like put in a mud bench where that closet was. And
nice.
Yeah.
Dude, it is funny looking at houses from certain eras. You're like, what were they doing?
Yeah.
That's very strange.
This one has like the weird like ledges, and it has like the kitchen. It has like this framed in area. It's like it's like a shelf kind of. It's like blocked in on two sides, and then it's open, and it has a door on one side, and then it's like the fridge and the stove and everything. But then there's like this like top part. I don't know. And like we put a bunch of plants up there. It's really cool for all of our plants.
Yeah.
But it's just like one of those weird things that they did like during the 90s.
Right.
And like you don't see it anymore because it looks like shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there was a few decades where, I mean, sometimes it was just like straight functionality, but not any sort of feng shui or style. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like some of maybe it was like the homes that were built in like the 40s or 50s, where it's like they're coming out of depression era. And they're just like, yeah, we just, we need to squeeze in as much things into this and this and this, and nobody gave a fuck about style.
Well, they didn't have like king size beds back then.
Sure, yeah.
So like, and furniture was smaller. People were smaller. I feel like it was like, yeah, you walk into these old houses, you're like, how is this a bedroom?
Right.
Like,
yeah. Dude, it's funny how we just kind of like prioritize like bigger and bigger houses. Well, I guess there's still like some of the old houses where it's like those I don't know. You see them in the North End, where now
Victorian style,
but then we've like converted them down into like 5 apartments. Yeah, like, dude, those ones were huge houses.
For sure.
We used to have a little house. We literally called it the little house. It was out by. We had a farmhouse, we had a barn, we had the farmhouse, and we had the little house. And apparently, there was 2 families that lived in the little house, and it was just like one family stayed in one bedroom, one in the other, and then they used a shared kitchen and
they were the farmhands.
Yeah, I think so. Like, and it was like before my dad bought the farm. But then we just used it for like storage, and then like us kids would like go play up there and stuff. But very strange. And then the other thought I had about the small size things, I went to Iceland once, and everything is smaller there.
Really?
And so there's no hotel that has a king size bed. You can find some that they'll put 2 singles together, but then you're like, when you're like me and my girl, oh yeah, for sure. And they do make like you can put like the one wrap sheet to kind of hold it together, but they didn't have that. And so I remember me and my ex-girlfriend were like trying to fuck on the bed, and if we're in the middle, it kept sliding like this, and then my legs would go like this, and she would like fall into the middle. So we're like, let's try the other way, and it's like fuck her this way, and then it slides this way, and like she's spreading out like this. It was kind of funny.
That's funny.
But yeah, nowhere had.
When did you go there?
This was 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay.
But we were looking up certain hotels, and the review would be like shit, and we'd go. It's like Yelpers, but it'd go on, and people would be like, the showers are too small, and you can tell it's just like some American person, because you go to the shower, it's just like a stand-up shower. It's fine, but yeah, they don't have the space. Yeah,
and the shower heads are probably a lot lower.
Yeah,
I've had to deal with that my whole life though. So I mean,
yeah, right. You're what, 6'4"? Oh yeah, you're definitely taller than me. Yeah, when I was taking your picture outside, because I took my buddy Ian's last time, and there was probably this much space on the top of that whiteboard, and then I was shooting you, and there's like 2 inches. I was like, oh shit.
Move your camera up.
Yeah. Being tall has its perks, but
also its downsides.
Yeah. You don't like planes, probably.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, I don't mind it, but at a point I was like, oh, all these little ladies always ask me to grab stuff. Like, it doesn't really happen that often, but it's something that you're just like, like I don't work at the grocery store. I'm just shopping.
Yeah. Dude, Cindy was saying about
she's short.
She's super short. It's like 4'11", I think.
Really?
Yeah, she's under 5 foot.
Yeah.
But she was saying about how she was like, even if I could reach something, sometimes you just want to ask somebody just as like, this is just a good reason to talk to that handsome man.
Fair.
Yeah. Was it the last time I flew? I was sitting beside this guy, and he looked like I think it was on the way back to Idaho, and he looked like a beefy Idahoan, like beard and pretty strong. Definitely way bigger than I was, but like fit, right?
Yeah.
And this lady, they had to bring a walker in or something, or she had a wheelchair outside, but like she was able to walk to the to that area. But so she's like getting out of her seat, and she's like somebody was helping her here. She's like, could you help me? And he's like, oh yeah, for sure. And she's probably like 90, but she grabs him and she goes, oh, so strong. And I was just like, whoa. It was like the cutest thing. Yeah. I was like, oh, so strong. Yeah. I don't know how they get people who can't walk like in through that aisle.
Yeah, normally you'd think that they'd have them sit like at the front of the plane or something.
I mean, I think they do, but like obviously sometimes you still have the the first class.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I can't afford first class, so
I don't think I've ever like actually look to see how much it costs, but I definitely have never flown first class.
Yeah, I feel like I flew business class once, but it was only because I got upgraded. Now it's really nice for free, but I feel like it's all people that just travel all the time and they get the perks or whatever.
Yeah, probably.
Or you have money, but like I'll see some people sometimes in the seat. I'm like, dude, you don't look like you could afford this.
Yeah.
Like, how are you here?
They just got a lump sum of money from their mom that passed away or something.
Yeah.
They just blow it.
Yeah.
How can I make myself seem more flashy?
Dude, I was watching did you watch the roast of Tom Brady? Are you into comedy at all?
I am a little bit, but I haven't followed it as much as I like used to.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of the newer roasts.
Okay. I got more into it lately, but there's this girl, Nikki Glaser, and I was just watching something of hers today, and she goes, she was talking about the drones in the sky.
Really?
And Delaware. She's like, well, you can tell they're not Boeing because they're still up there.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, that's good. But, dude, those things are wild.
Yeah. What do you think about them?
I really don't know. Are they still up there?
Like, oh yeah, my buddy saw one in like over Boise like 3 nights ago.
Oh no way.
Yeah, it's the first one I've heard of here in town.
Yeah, weren't there some on the coast that people spotted in Oregon?
I think so. They've had sightings. So I follow this guy on YouTube. He has he is like the Earth Watchman or whatever. He used to work for he's Mr. MBB 333, and he knows a lot about like video editing and all of this shit, where he's really good at like debunking these people will send him videos from all over the planet of like UFOs and like clouds that look weird and all this like shit, and he like goes into like the seismic data from these different like places, like the Yellowstone volcano, and he goes into like the Schumann resonance to the activity from the sun and like the X and like the coronal mass ejections or whatever, if there's like any X-class flares that erupted or whatever, and which that actually has a correlation with the seismic activity. It's directly correlated that within 3 days of us getting a huge coronal mass ejection that hits the Earth, which causes the aurora borealis. It's like it's ionized particles that hit the electromagnetic sphere or the magnetosphere, and then depending upon how much there is, like if it's a very powerful X-class flare, then there's more ionized particles that hit the Earth and get trapped inside this. It's like a torus field, which is the magnetosphere, which is like this barrier that protects us from all of those particles, but it's shaped like a torus, and so if the particles like get through a lot of the layers, they hit the poles. That's where like and so depending upon how many ionized particles will depend, or like how strong it is, depends on how like south you will be able to see those.
Sure.
But there's this correlation with seismic activity. Like these huge earthquakes always happen within like 3 days after these. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. But anyway, so he'll like debunk these people and be like, oh, well, you could tell that she was taking a video from or like behind a window, and that's like the reflection. But then like the ones where he's like, okay, he's like, that's obviously like 15 to 2,000 feet in elevation. He's like, this is like, he's very good at like using deductive reasoning to tell you whether or not he thinks it's real.
Right.
And he used to, and I forget, it wasn't Sony, but it was like Universal Studios or something like that, that he did like video editing and like with CGI
so he's
and
good
shit.
at like seeing where the camera is and
the lighting
angle,
and all of these things. Like
interesting.
It's pretty cool.
So then you can take like if you see something crazy, and then you're like, okay, let's see what he says about it and see if it has any like legitimacy to it.
Yeah, but like a lot of the videos, it's like, so you can tell that some of them are like craft, and then some of them are, so there's like this new term that people are starting to talk about. It's called plasmoids, which is like it's a ball of plasma. And a lot of these, even like geneticists have had the hypothesis that plasma could be the like another state of conscious beings.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of weird ones, like if like some of them so some of the sightings you can tell are like a drone, because there's like a white light and then there's like a blinky red and green light, which are like aviation lights. They have to have those on there.
Yeah.
But then there's other ones, and it's like these orbs or whatever, and it's like they shift in color, or like, and some people are starting to like talk about how it almost looks like light through water.
Okay.
And like the way that, like, if you look at the bottom of the ocean when the light shines through the waves, and how it like ripples and has these effects, and it's like a lot of these like ones that are more unidentified, like the plasmoids or whatever. That's what they look like.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it's like half psyops by the U.S. government to try and make us think that there's not maybe interdimensional beings that are trying to like interact with us.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dude, I've heard a couple theories. I mean, for one, they say about that air conditioner or heater kills me. But then this room gets hot.
I know. I definitely was like, it's kind of warm.
Yeah. I can open this door actually. Probably. Yeah. I don't even think I've seen your hair, dude, before. I think you're always in a beanie.
I know. I do. I'm not comfortable having hair anymore. I miss my dreads. Every time I see anybody in a picture or like on a video that has dreads, I'm just like, fuck, I miss my dreads. I should have never, and I still have them in a bag.
Oh, no
like
way.
I kept them, and I'm like, I keep telling my wife, I was like, I'm gonna weave those bitches back on my head.
Oh,
and she's like, oh.
When did you cut them?
It was before that connection, huh? I think it was.
Yeah, I don't think you had dreads when I met you.
No, I think it was June. It was like a month or two before 2 years of connect, like 2 years. So
when you cut them, it's just like shave them or like off pretty much.
I was in a weird manic state where I was like, I think I was high on ketamine at the time, and I was like thinking about it for a long time. I was like, oh, I need to make changes in my life. I was like, if I cut my hair, I was like, then I'll be like more inclined to make these changes. And I woke up one day and I said bye to my wife when I went to work, and she's like, I had the worst dream that you cut your dreads off and they look like shit. And I was like, well, I'm gonna do it. And then I was talking to her later, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And so I was like driving from Kuna to Star to go do another job, and I had this knife and I just cut them off. And like, and I sent her this picture, and there's like these little like stubs. Yeah. And like I looked like a dinosaur. Like it looked like dinosaur little.
Dude, that's hilarious. I did have one. I think I had a ketamine. Well, I didn't have that much hair, but I had a ketamine kind of trip, and it was very similar. Where I was just like, dude, you need to like, you need to stop giving a fuck with. You think about this, and you need to change this, and I was like,
ketamine don't do that to you. It's weird.
And so I was just like, fuck it. I was going, just pull off all my hair. I was just like buzz it or whatever. But then the next day I was like, God damn it, what I do, but. It was not nearly the same amount of hair that came off. Yeah.
I haven't done it that much recently, but when I do, I definitely am like, I need to drink more water. I need to start working out.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I doing? I need to go vegan. I just like.
Do you write ever on like when you're like pretty high on ketamine?
No, I mean, I kind of did a little bit just because I was journaling a bunch at the time.
I just get like crazy ideas, and I'm like, I can't forget this, and I'm like grabbing a paper, but like I can barely write. I'm just like. Because you're all sideways.
It's like when you have those epiphanies when you do whippets, and then you come back and you're like, I don't remember anything.
Yeah. So then I'll wake up the next day and I'll look at it just looks like crazy ramblings from some crazy dude, and you're just like, oh my God.
There's probably some truth in there though.
There is. I mean, a lot of times it's just like 95% noise, but like a nugget or two, where it's just like, oh, that's actually important.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the drone shit. I don't really know what I think, but it is crazy that they say that like when they try to go inspect them, they just like go away or like they turn out, right? Something like that. So I'm like, so you're telling me that you send a helicopter up there with some video guy and then they just disappear? Like, so that's weird, right? I mean,
so they've also had They've had like police drones go up, or like police imaging technology that use like infrared scans and everything, and they don't show up.
Yeah.
And so they're using some type of technology that doesn't even produce any heat. And so it's like, that's like conventional, just like the transference of electricity from one system to another to run a motor or whatever, even if it's like a propeller and it's still like that's what is it, like one of the laws of thermodynamics or something?
Propeller would create heat.
Yeah, right? Like or even just the conductors transferring the energy through the processor or whatever would still create a signature of heat. And it's not doing it.
Yeah. See, and so I guess I was listening to somebody talk about it, and it's just like, I mean, there's obviously a few theories, but it's like, it's either, I feel like the government has to know.
Oh, definitely.
And so then that means they know it's somebody else or them, right? So, or they don't know. And that's scary. It's like almost scarier if like they had no idea. They still can't figure it out. And you're like, so you guys can't even figure it out? Like, who run the world? Like, so that was almost scarier, you know? So like, hopefully they know and they're just fucking with us. But
so I watched this video, and this guy went on this website, and there's this website that's tied to this organization that keeps track of the transference and use of any radioactive material. And there was this canister that had like spent plutonium or whatever, uranium or something, whatever these like radioactive isotopes that they were trying to dispose of. It was in this canister, and it left New Jersey and was supposed to go somewhere. And when it got to the place, the canister was busted open and it was no longer in there. And this government website that's ran by this organization has this, and it was like it was like a day before a lot of these drones started to show up.
Yeah.
And so the hypothesis that this one guy was depicting is that some of them are government like drones controlled by the military or like the defense department or whatever, DOD, to try and figure out where this radioactive material is. And this guy from the military was like, he came out, he's like since like it was like before, I think 9/11, the government had already created a drone that has some type of technology to be able to scan and use imaging, whatever, radar, system that will be able to pick up on radioactive material.
Yeah.
And so he's like, these are probably like military, like, and that would make sense on why the government doesn't want to release that information publicly. Because if everyone knew that it was because they were looking for some type of radioactive material,
right,
that would
a freak out.
Yeah, mass hysteria. Yeah.
So. Also, like, so who are the people that are saying, like, if they're sending police drones up to scan and saying they're not finding anything, is that still run by the government? So maybe they are, but they're just telling us they're not. Yeah. You know, I don't know.
I don't know. It's still. It also could be that's weird psyops thing. It's like they're trying to make so much delusion that no one knows what to think and what to believe, and so we're just like.
Well, and that's one of the things about. No, so to the point of like a psyop, like that is one of the frustrating things about. I mean, you have a collection of people and everybody's believing different things, right? And then it's like if you're on like one side of let's say it's just put it to left and right, so it's just. When this side, like if something happens that these guys are concerned about, and then something else happens, they're like, "Oh, that's just a psyop to distract us from this."
Yeah.
But then sometimes real things happen, and then other people who don't believe that are like, "That's just a psyop to distract us from this." So because it all obviously could be, you know, it's just like, "Oh, we need this to dominate the news." So this other thing slips under the radar or whatever. Like, I mean, obviously.
Well, it's like the P. Diddy thing. Yeah. When that stuff came out, the U.S. government had just failed their 7th audit. It was 7 years in a row.
Yeah.
They failed an audit where they can't tell or show where any of the money is going.
Oh, the Pentagon.
exactly. The Pentagon, exactly. And so it's like, and so then the whole P. Diddy thing, and like, not that that's not a big situation, but they release those things.
Let's push that story a little more. And let's push that under, for sure. Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast. Andrew Schultz, he's a comedian. He just had 50 Cent on. And they're just like, prying, like, so what about this? What about this? And like, because 50 Cent is like kind of known for giving a lot of shit, I guess. And about the, like, just different P. Diddy situations.
Oh, yeah. He's publicly stated a bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah. And then I guess he's like, done a documentary on it or something. Really? I don't know. Sometimes I just see a headline and I'm like, actually, this could just be fake. So I've seen so many of those. You click on it, it goes to some random website. I'm like, dude, this is fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
But it is funny because they're like asking him like, so what do you think? And he's just like, you trying to get me to snitch? But I
don't know.
Yeah, that's just wild too.
LeBron James just fled the country. He sold his house in Florida and he fucking left the country. Yeah, Ellen DeGeneres, like a bunch of people that are pretty tight with P. Diddy have all like left the country.
That's wild.
Yeah,
it is crazy. Just like, dude, is this the next Epstein? Like, fuck.
Oh yeah, but it's so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because it ties in the Clinton Foundation and what they were doing in these other countries and like and oh dude, it's wild. And like and Trudeau just resigned today.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I missed this.
Yeah. And he's kind of like, people are talking about how he has ties to some weird shit. It's like Prince, what was the
wasn't one of the royal families connected to Epstein.
Yeah. And like since then he like has been MIA, and the Queen, like, I don't know, he's not allowed around and all this weird shit. It's like it's I think it's so much bigger than we kind of realize. That this is like, it's going to be weird when all of it comes out. You're like, oh, this ties Hollywood and all of like in Congress and these politicians and then the royal family and then like, dude,
that's wild. But then it's like, also you're like, is it going to come out? Because like with the whole Epstein shit, it's like how much is still under wraps? Like we still don't like have access to any of like most of the logs and all this shit. You're like, come on, like,
well, Elon Musk stated on a couple of different podcasts, including Joe Rogan, that when Donald Trump gets into office, that he is going to release all of the information about Epstein.
That would be a fucking
yeah. And so that's why there's a bunch of people that are leaving like DC right now. Yeah. Like that would be like politicians and shit. People are going missing where they're like, oh, I haven't seen this politician in like 30 days.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how I feel about I guess it always feels like people like Elon and other billionaires are always in charge anyway. Yeah. So it's not really anything new, but it does still feel like, I mean, I like Elon, I think that he has the best intentions for the most part, but at the same point, it's still like, fuck, dude, another billionaire that's just controlling everything. Yeah. It's just like he's still going to do what's best for his companies and, for the most part. Yeah. But at the same time, there's still things that are good that come when you're like, oh yeah, fucking release that shit. Like, stop trying to keep everybody in the dark.
I'm still on the fences about Elon Musk. Yeah. Like, he's done a lot and he's trying to do things that are very beneficial for the progression of society as a whole, but then it's like he's gonna blatantly say that he's like, oh, I haven't seen any evidence for extraterrestrials. And they're like, bro, like there's no way that you don't know there's extraterrestrials out there.
Especially now. I mean, it's just like, it does seem very obvious at this point. Like, just with the amount of video recorded sightings and like what is that guy Fravor that was on Rogan and just like other just and then just some of the the guy who testified about I don't know, like I don't follow that deeply, but I mean even just some of the stuff I see, I'm like, holy shit, and I've always kind of just thought like, why wouldn't there be? It seems very silly to think that we're the only like conscious life in the.
Dude, you want to know how deep this rabbit hole goes? This is wild. So, and this is something I've told some people. So our lifespan has 120-year expectancy for a reason. It's because, so like on the DNA sequence there are the codons in our DNA sequence, there's this strand at the end of each codon on both sides, and it sends an electrical signal to cells, to new cells, to replicate existing cells. So on the second codon in human DNA sequence, there is this artificial, it's like a cap. It's like this, there's this thing that causes the information, it causes that telomere to degrade over time. So it stops sending the right information for those cells to identically replicate, and which causes us to age. Geneticists have taken samples of DNA all over the planet. They've never found a cap on a telomere on any other DNA sequence from any other life form on this planet. It doesn't matter if it's plant, fungi, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just us. The weird thing is they can trace this back in the lineage of our fossils to about 250,000 years ago. This falls in line perfect. So there's these books, these ancient books, like, so the book of Enoch is like a big one that was taken out of the Bible. And it goes into, and it talks about like the Anunnaki and creating a slave race. And they had like they were here for like 200,000 years. And then they were tired. It was like this subclass of them that was called the Ijiji, that were the working class that were mining all the gold. And after 200,000 years, they didn't really interact with like the hominids on the planet and society or whatever. And at a point, the working class got fed up and they were like, we're not doing this anymore. And so they had a revolt or whatever. And so that was the start of their genetic program, when they started to alter the DNA of the hominids on the planet with like the whole like Garden of Eden or whatever. But there's like, so these cuneiform tablets that they found over in Syria and whatever, it's like the Dead Sea Scrolls and shit. In these tablets, they're like, there's a couple of different books, like the Enuma Elish is one of them that's like very prominent, and it talks about the same type of stuff, that about 250,000 years ago, like they altered the genetics of the hominids of our ancestors on this planet to create a slave race. They did it a couple of times, and they made the first ones like too powerful. It was like they had telepathy and telekinesis and all these things. It's like they took all of the best traits of them, put it into the hominids on the planet, but they made them stronger and more powerful than they were. And so then that's like where like the Great Flood comes into. Yeah. It's like they had to wipe this like civilization off the planet because they lived for, like Moses, he lived for like 600 or like 900 years or something. And so supposedly our ancestors, before they did the reset, like had too much capabilities. Yeah. And so they had to dumb down our DNA and like, and then they capped it for and it ties perfectly in line with these stories.
When they did that, do you know, does it say anything about when they did the flood, how did they survive? Or were they like, did they still have like ships and stuff?
Oh, they're probably,
because I don't know much about the Anunnaki, is that right?
Yeah.
But yeah, weren't they like at a different planet and then they created they created the slave base down here or something? Or
so the Anunnaki it's like a group of beings. It's like the Syrians, the Orions, the Lyrians. It's like a group of like multiple different races of beings that came. And so like at a point you expand your species or whatever, you just move out into the cosmos. You go and you inhabit and develop on other planets. So supposedly they reside on this planet called Nibiru, which orbits, it's called like the 12th planet or something weird. I don't know. Zachariah Stitchin wrote a book about it, but so this planet orbits a brown dwarf. So our star, actually the majority of stars are in at least a binary star system. And astronomers have proven there's so the tilt of the axis of Uranus it's tilted so much and spins backwards that astronomers are like, there was obviously a large planetary body, a large mass that had a huge gravitational field that came into the inner solar system And it's like there's certain planets they can tell that are in different positions than they used to be. Like they can trace shit back with the orbits of the planets and all this crazy shit, and they can be like, oh, so at a point, like planets were in different places, it caused this or whatever. And so supposedly this planet, Nibiru, it orbits this brown dwarf, which we can't see with the naked eye because it only emits infrared and just infrared light. And so we actually can't see it, but it's this large planet that is in this, or it's a large star that's in this binary, like this elliptical orbit with our star. And every so often that planet Nibiru comes in contact or whatever. Supposedly, and this is what's in a bunch of these stories, that they, so the Anunnaki that lived on this planet, they started to diminish their resources and like negatively impact their atmosphere.
Right.
And so to sustain that atmosphere, they figured out if they create monoatomic gold. So if they take gold and they do this process, they can create its individual tiny particles, and they can spray it into their atmosphere, and it'll sustain the atmosphere or whatever. And they didn't have enough gold. They found out that Earth had so much gold, and so that's why they came here.
That's the part.
Yeah. But also, like, I have like an extra little bit of like a hypothesis that I've created about that. Like, I believe that not only are they doing it to sustain their atmosphere, but they're doing it to sustain the vibration of that planet. So gold, because it's so the crystalline, like the lattice structure of the molecules and like the metal that it's made out of, it resonates at a high vibration. And I don't know if this is true, but this is like some weird conspiracy shit that reptilian shapeshifters eat gold to raise their vibration, to sustain themselves in this environment, because they're actually of a lower vibration and they wouldn't be able to sustain themselves. And so this is a crazy rabbit hole. So there's a lot of these societies talk about these eras that we go through, where there's like a gold, and they use a wheel, and it's like there's a golden era on the top, a silver era, a bronze era, a silver era, and it's like this great cycle. The cycle of like civilization, of consciousness, or whatever. It's tied to this elliptical orbit that our solar system does. So our solar system is like this, but it spins on an axis like this on the plane in the Milky Way galaxy. So it's called the succession of the equinoxes. And it's a 26,700 year elliptical orbit. And so it's 13,350 years on one side. And what it has to do with is a full orbit, right? So when the Great Flood happened was probably 3,000 or 13,350 years ago. And so my hypothesis on how it's tied to like our consciousness, the rise and fall of civilization. So like there's the Schumann resonance. You ever heard of the Schumann resonance? This is like a vibrational frequency that the Earth naturally resonates at. It's a very low frequency, but the weird thing is there's a correlation with the frequency of our brain states, like us naturally walking around and like interacting or whatever, like with minimal interaction. It's at 7.82 hertz. That's the natural frequency that the Earth resonates at, the natural Schumann resonance. And then so there's like this correlation between like our consciousness and the vibration of the and it's like, and then so you ever heard of cymatics? All right. So that's the visual representation of frequency interacting with matter. And so if you put like sand on a plate, and then you hook it up to a frequency generator, and you increase it by octaves, the pattern increases in complexity every time you increase it by octaves. And so the higher the frequency, the more complex matter becomes. And so my hypothesis is that as we go through this cycle, so on one side of the Milky Way galaxy, there's less stars, there's less photons, so there's less vibration, there's a lower energy field. And then as we transition to the other side, there's more stars, there's more photons, there's a higher frequency. And in 2012, astronomers proved that we cross over that galactic meridian to the other side of the Milky Way galaxy. And the Mayan calendar ties, they're like, oh, the end of the era, like it was like they'd say like what, the end of the world or whatever. It's like, but it's just like the end of the age. Yeah. And what happened in 2012? It's because we cross over that galactic meridian and we start that new cycle. Yeah. And so now we're increasing in consciousness and as well as the complexity of matter because there's a higher frequency on the other side of that. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're starting what, 13,000 cycle, right? Or
yeah, for one side of it. Yes. Yeah. Era. And so I imagine that the Anunnaki, they're like, oh, we know this. So if we spray gold into our atmosphere, then we can sustain a higher vibration, and they probably never have to fall in consciousness or society.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, this frequency thing. I mean, if I didn't really know, not that I know anything now, but like before I really didn't know anything. Even like say, for example, sound healing. It's just like that would have never crossed my mind, or I would be like, yeah, it's woo woo. But then when you just watch how sound, like in that situation where you see how it affects the sand, you're like, oh no shit, and then you see how sound affects water. That's just one kind of frequency, etc. Yeah. So I was just like, oh yeah, of course there's like so much to how frequencies affect.
Well, everything's based off frequency. Like light's based on frequency. Like they say that like matter is only it is literally light that is at such a low vibrational state that it becomes solid.
Real interesting. Yeah. What was? Fuck, I think I lost what I was thinking of. There was some other. Terrence Howard.
There you go.
There it is.
We were thinking,
yeah.
Took us so long.
It just finally hit me. So he had that model that he made where he plugged in a bunch of whatever I forget what they were talking about, but it was to explain how Saturn existed. Then when he turned it on, he's like, we didn't even like program it to make this. It made it on its own, and it looks like Saturn. Yeah. Based on like his theory. Yeah. And so that was interesting, where he's just like, you just turn it on and then boom, there's the particles create that.
So there's a guy, I don't know who his name is. I couldn't tell you, but he has taken like images that use frequencies. So there's different ways of depicting that cymatics thing or whatever. They can use water in a dish, and then they'll have like a camera above it, and they'll have different lights that'll project on it. And as there's like dips and valleys or whatever, it'll amplify different, and it'll show these different like complex like overlapping geometric structures or whatever. And he was able to do like these 3 different ones. And when he puts these images together, it creates a human face.
Whoa.
Yes. And so it's like all of these frequencies, like that's what we are. Right. We are literally like a conglomerate of frequencies that create us as a being or a vessel. Yeah. Like for our consciousness based on our vibrations.
Was it an attractive human face or an ugly human?
It was like a little like, I don't know, like Asian looking girl. Like she was like.
Because I'm wondering like do more attractive people have a more perfect frequency structure probably. That like creates like their.
Maybe.
I don't know. I always make this joke because people think I look like somebody they know all the time. And I'm like, if you average like all the faces in the world, I'm like the middle. Like you just get me. So I have similarities in so many different people's faces.
There's really not that many different character traits.
Right, yeah. The faces are very similar. Yeah. It's just a little wider jaw or skinnier or whatever.
Yeah. Even when I had dreads, I had a lot of people be like, oh man, you look just like my friend, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, how do I look like this person? Like I have big ass gauges and dreads and like whatever.
All dreaded people look the same.
You're not wrong. They kind of
do. Dude, we went to Xanadu the other night.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I wanted to go. I forgot, and I like saw something about it a couple months ago, and then I found out like the day after.
I don't really keep. I mean, I'm more in tune with the scene because of Cinda, but if I wasn't, dating her, I would, wouldn't be connected at all, really. So she hit me or asked me if I want to go, and we went. It was cool. They have this is just a side note, but they have like in their garden, they have that big dome. Yeah. And then I met the guy who built it, but he built this really cool wooden structure.
The geodesic structure.
It was really cool. I was like, damn, dude, you put a lot of work into this.
So there's a company, Trillium Domes, that I've been following, and they sell all of their blueprints on their website. Like schematics and everything, and you can scale it up or down in this program. And they have a bunch of different like geodesic structures. They make greenhouses and stuff. I'm actually going to build one on the property like this spring. Yeah. Dude, they're really cool.
Yeah, that was a good time. And then they had the DJ in the middle.
It was in the middle.
Yeah,
it was in the greenhouse.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so they had like the DJ in the middle, and then the dome started. So the dance floor was really small. I mean, it fit like 10 to 15 people. But then they had a walkway between the plants and the wood. Okay. Fit like, you could stand in here, but it was pretty skinny. It was cool. But where was I going there? I forget.
The frequency?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Think about it later. we went there, and there was something. Yeah. Anyway, it was cool. It was a good day.
How many people were there?
When I 50-ish. I mean, I didn't get there till like 10 or so, but I guess it went till 2. Nice. But they had a food truck and vendors, and then when I don't drink, I still try to say yes to things. Yeah. Because I can start hermiting out really hard.
I do that.
And I'm just like, I'm not drinking. I don't want to go. But I was just like, told myself, dude, you got to say yes to things, especially more now when you're not drinking.
When you need that type of like social interaction.
Yeah. And I'm an extrovert. I need that, but I get most of that from bartending. So that's good. So I don't mind like being in the house and stuff. But I went for a couple hours. And do you know Ben Sanchez?
Yeah, of course. He's the one that did my sleep.
Oh yeah, that's right. I think we talked about that. Yeah, dude, he does such good work.
Yeah, it's not finished yet. We still gotta finish it.
But. Yeah. I gotta get a tattoo from him at some point,
dude. Yeah. It can be, I guess. Not every person's going to think of it as much of a spiritual process as tattoos can be. Right. But like, it's a good like putting yourself through physical like discomfort to connect with your soul or your spirit or whatever, like your mind, like to like go into that, like to like it's a very like powerful spiritual process sometimes.
Yeah, so I guess especially once you get into like the more excruciating pain as the time goes on.
Oh yeah,
trying to like just kind of embrace that.
Oh, it sucks sometimes.
I haven't even gone that deep. I mean, my sleeve, I think my longest session was 4 or 5 hours, and that was rough.
That's still rough. Yeah, I think it was like 6 or 7 hours that I went one time, and by the end of it, I was just like, oh my god, like, and I like brought a little bit of hash, and like me and Ben smoked, and then that made it worse because I was like, oh, this is gonna be fine. I'm just gonna like meditate, and then just like I like hyper focused on it, and I like couldn't like stop thinking about it.
See, I probably would drink. I know you bleed more, but I'm like, either that, I don't know, because if I smoke weed, time takes longer. So I'm like, I don't want this to feel like it's longer.
And that's what happened. I was like, fuck, dude.
He was telling me the other night, dude, I love Ben, but he was telling me that he had got this tattoo that was, I think it was 7 hours. And he's like, yeah, the artist was only here. He's like, I can't pussy out because the artist is leaving tomorrow. Like, I have to finish this. Yeah. But he's like, dude, it felt like just somebody like sawing into his arm at the end, and he's just like,
yeah. After you go over it, like, and so this doesn't have any color in it, but this does. Oh yeah. And this was all done in one session, and it was like, oh, the outline. I was like, all right, outline wasn't bad, and then it was the shading, and I was like, all right, shading kind of sucked, and then it was the color afterwards, and it was like 3 times over the same tattoo, like in a couple of hours, dude. It was miserable.
Yeah. I've been really itching to get a bunch more lately, but And I've told myself for the most part I want to start trying to trade for work. And so I want to start doing like photo video for tattoo artists. And so the more I do, I think the more I'll be able to approach.
Dude, I have a homie that might be into that.
Yeah?
Yeah. He's relatively new, but he's been an artist for a long time. Tanner Weiniger. He was there that night.
I do know.
Yeah. He actually has designed my left sleeve.
Okay.
Where, like when I start working more because work was slowing. Construction industries just started to slow down, but he's gonna do my other sleeve, and he's like a graffiti artist for a long time. He's like he does dope shit. It's like very sacred geometry, but he's getting into other styles. Like
no, I wouldn't mind getting some sacred geometry. I mean, I'm very into psychedelics and stuff. So I need to hit him up then. I think I do follow him on Instagram. I think he was gonna do one for Cinda too.
Nice.
Because I'm actually going to do one for Ben just to, because I have an idea for the video that I want to do. And it's inspired. Have you ever watched Animal Kingdom? That's on Amazon Prime. It's like about like this family that steals shit. They live in fucking somewhere in California, but it's a cool show. It's just like, kind of crime drama, like with action and, but their intro is like very gritty tattooing. And like slow-mo, like really close up, like the needle hitting the skin, you see the skin wave, so that kind of shit, and then like just a close-up of the wipe, and like there's like it's not just like zoomed out, it's like very in your face detail, a little gritty, and then they have surfing and stuff mixed in, but I want to kind of take that style and film Ben tattooing somebody and see if I can create like a really like artsy promo video. If I can, then if I can do what I see in my head, then I can take that video and then, go to artists and be like, I can do something like this for you. Or we can do like photo shoots where, because a lot of artists' work are so outdated. And they don't have like any like good recent shit in their books or whatever. And so I'm like, we can run it.
If they're lucky, they get an actual like finished tattoo picture. It's like, because it's like they take a picture of it finished, but then it's like fresh, and so it doesn't look right. And then
so you need them to come back in 2 weeks or whatever. So and my buddy Daniel did this for Ben. Actually, I was like, that's such a good idea. Where you create an event, you have everybody who wants to come back. You get a free photo, photo shoot, like, and it's like very stylized. And then Ben gets all these photos for his portfolio. Nice. And then Daniel, who's the photographer, got some free work and stuff, or trade work. So. That's also like a move. I was like, that's smart. Yeah,
for sure. We should be able to like, I feel like we're moving back to the whole barter system. People are starting to realize like it'd be more beneficial if we could trade like the skills for someone else's skills. Or
well, especially, you have a tradable skill set. Like the photo video is a tradable skill set, but before this, I didn't really. I was like, what am I gonna trade? I bartend. So, and then I play music, but like, what is that? How am I gonna trade that? Am I gonna write you a song? Like, no, I'm like, cool, man. I don't want to give you a free tattoo for you writing me a song.
I cooked in kitchens forever, and so I kind of get that. I'm like, I can cook food, and like I thought about it, like, so Anthony Bourdain was like my idol growing up. Yeah, and I was like, this is a good field to go into. I was like, even like the fall of society happens. I was like, everyone needs to eat. I was like, I'll still be able to cook food and still have a job. But now it's just like, it's more stress. You get underpaid, undervalued. It's really like hard on your body. And like it's a high stress, high reward. So like that led me to drink a lot more than I already was. And so I'm like, is that really that tradable of a skill?
Right.
I mean, maybe.
It's still good to have. It's probably good you did, but and there's the career path to be an Anthony Bourdain is few and far between.
Exactly.
Like to be the next, there's not like that much opportunity to.
There's 1,050 chefs in Boise, and do you know the names of any of them?
Yeah.
Probably one.
We got who's the guy that won the James Beard.
Chris Camorri.
Is that? See, I wouldn't even know his name. He's the kin guy.
Exactly.
But for sure. Like,
besides that, no one like.
Right.
Yeah, maybe Richard, because Richard. The restaurant's called Richard, so it's named after the guy.
He's better at branding than most.
For sure.
Yeah, it is tough because I mean, it's like finding what you want to do in life is just, and that was always a struggle for me, and I mean, still is in some days. I want to do this podcast long term, but like you have to build. Like if you really want to be successful, you have to build it over a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
So you have to have the patience, the time, and then so like when you get a couple years in, you're
Dedication.
like, is this what I want to do? And then you're doubting yourself the whole way along the way. I chased music in my 20s. It's like, yeah, it's all I ever wanted, but then it wasn't working out. So it's just like, well, dude, you got to figure out another skill set too. You got to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with painting. Like I feel like I'm an amazing painter. I've been told that by a bunch of people, and like a lot of the paintings that I've done, like they're really amazing. Yeah. But they took so many hours to do. I never sold a single one of them, and it's just like, and I mean, I probably am not the best at marketing myself, right. And so maybe if I honed in on that skill, then I could like start selling art or doing things that would bring me revenue from my artistic expression. But that's like, I don't know. You're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, I do think that is the big bottleneck for most artists is the business side, myself included. So yeah, it's just like either finding somebody to team up with, and then they can help you market. They'll take some revenue, or you have to pay them, etc. Or learning that skill set, which is not fun for most artists to learn. Oh, how do you do business? How do you market? How do you what? So that's annoying. And I do think that, some artists do get lucky by maybe they just knew the right person who they're like, oh, let me help you promote it.
Team with somebody.
Yeah.
For sure.
Fuck, dude, I don't even know how to give like any sort of like pointers in that shit because I've never done it at all. You know, like you go to coffee shops and they feature one artist and like, they were maybe lucky because they knew the artist and they knew the owner and they liked their shit. So at least, all those people that walk in are seeing your shit, you know, but it's like, how do you meet somebody who has a coffee shop in Eagle? Like, and be like, hey, can I get my shit there? But other than that.
Well, then you have to take time out of your day and go actually like do it and pursue that side of it.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like a lot of artists are more introverted than they maybe like to express.
Oh yeah.
And so to go and put yourself out there in that manner, that's very difficult to do.
Dude, putting your own art out there and just being like, okay, world, here's this.
There's so many haters, it's hard. You're like, fuck.
Yeah, dude, especially fucking art, because art is so pinky up in a lot of ways. Like photography was like that, and you just get, I never really like heard people hating on me, but I know they do because I hear photographers hate on other photographers. And I'm like, dude, you're shitting on this guy. He's just starting out. Like, what? Like, but it's just pretty, and chefs are the same way. I mean, it's just like, oh, that guy over there thinks he's so good, but they don't even do this.
I do that though. I go to restaurants. I'm like, who the fuck's running this kitchen?
Dude, do you know Robbie?
Oh yeah, I love Robbie.
So he's coming on tomorrow. So
nice.
Yeah, and we've been trying to do this also for years, but Sydney's always like, dude, I can't go out to eat with Robbie. Like, she's like, is this dude, he just shits on everything.
I get it.
But she's like, I love living with him because I just had the most like primo food all the time because he knows what the fuck he's doing. But
he's a fantastic cook for sure.
Yeah. I gotta take another piss.
The studio that those guys from Ninjas Are Butterflies do it in, it's like they sit around a table and they have their mics on the table. Well, 3 of them do. I think Lily, she always sits on a couch. Half the time she's like knitting and shit and like.
Oh, nice. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, but you can just, it's like, and I don't think I started watching their stuff. I don't even feel like it's been more than a year.
Okay.
I feel like it's probably only been like 8 months maybe, but they do come out with an episode every week.
Yeah. See, I think that's one of the most important things that I've seen.
Be consistent.
Even smaller podcasters that have to be consistent.
Yeah, for sure.
And I couldn't figure it out. But so 1 a week, that's great.
But they talked about how like they had just like done a new or like got a new studio, I think, and it's like they've obviously like you do it long enough, you figure out these little things like problems you run into, and they always like in the beginning of the episode they pass around this like card or whatever, like this. It's like one of those snap things, but it has like a color spectrum on it because they'll put it in front of each person, and then I'm sure that Andrew, he goes ahead and he like matches the colors on each camera, so they all are like perfect. You know what I mean?
But they show that.
Yeah, they show it in the beginning.
Interesting.
It's like, and so they'll hold it up and then they'll pass it around. And
interesting, because that's like something that if I did that, I would like then cut it out.
You'd think.
Yeah. But that's cool that they like show that process.
Yeah, they have like a couple interesting segments. They have like Lily's question corner where she always asks some random question. And like the one the other day was kind of dumb. Like some of them were really dumb, some were kind of funny and like intriguing. But like the one recently was like, if you were a soup, what soup would you be?
Yeah.
Like, but then like I said, they have that like song. They always like do a song.
Yeah.
And then Andrew always like sends them like reels. He always has like a reel that he'll send them, and then they'll all watch it like together and react to it together on the podcast. There's like a couple little things that it's like kind of interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. I when I did this, modeling, trying to be like Joe Rogan as far as it was like free form. It was not really even a start.
Yeah,
you know, it's just like, oh, we're live. Yeah, you know, they just turn it on as it flows.
Yeah,
and then it's just like they go. Obviously, if there's certain people, he has certain questions he's wanted to ask.
Yeah,
like when it was Trump or just scientists.
I almost messaged you yesterday and was like, oh, like, is there going to be a structure to this? Like, is there like something that we should be talking about? Like,
yeah,
but
and I like that he's like, whatever you want to talk about, because some people do have like, hey, I've been really thinking about this, or I would love to come on to talk about this thing, and so I'm like, yeah, so that's where I've tried to model, I guess, after a little bit, where it's just like, yeah, like we're here to just either shoot the shit or whatever comes up naturally, or if somebody wants to talk about this or that, yeah, for sure.
Well, it's like Lex Friedman, he's really good. He has like a lot of very intriguing questions that he asks. There's also another one that I watch. It's called Know Thyself. It's very like spiritual, like transformational kind of like basis. He's like really big into like spiritual beliefs, but like almost like how those transfer into changes and different experiences that you have in your life after you like have these realizations.
Okay.
But he always has these like really, really good questions to ask.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I've seen a lot of people, they're like, he always is like, and he starts with this question, and some of them people are like, they're like, that was one of the best questions I've ever been asked.
Yeah.
And then he goes, and it's just like,
do you watch Hot Ones?
Where they eat I've only seen like one episode of it.
So apparently he is lauded in podcast and interview community as one of the best interviewers. Like, it's like him, and there's this one other guy that they had that I'd never heard of, but they're like, he does a ton of crazy research. So he finds out like these stories that nobody knows about some celebrity, and that nobody's ever asked. So he's trying to ask different questions than the main news or whatever they're doing their normal interviews. So he's like, when you were 10, you used to do this, and then they're just like, how the fuck did you find that out? They're like, holy shit. Well, yeah, and then they tell us some sort of fascinating story.
Well, I feel like on those like, at a point, especially with like the bigger podcasts, they all kind of have similar like guests on there.
Yeah.
People that have been on a multitude of different.
Well, a lot of those big guests then run the circuit.
Yeah.
Too. It's like if you're promoting a book or, you'll see them on all the. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like it makes sense to be a little different. You're like, oh, well, I got to like have like a different question. I have like, it's got to be more in depth. I got to do something like a little above and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to like do that much research.
Yeah. I've often thought like when I grow it, what will I do that's different with say a celebrity that like I would finally meet? Because sometimes it's like, oh, if you're known for this movie or whatever, it's just like, but I just want to talk to you about doing drugs, or like something just so silly. But I know there's other podcasts that do that too, I guess. But I don't think it's tough because it's starting this out, like I do see it as an art form. And when a lot of people, like I've told people that I have a podcast, they're like, oh, another white guy with a podcast. And I was like, I was like, so you only listen to white guy podcasts?
Yeah, right. You're a racist.
Yeah, like you're a racist. So I'm like, yeah, there's plenty of black podcasts. So if you don't listen to them, well, that's on you. Yeah. But also, it's one of those things where, you know, say for example, DJs. You know, a lot of people get that DJ hate. Like everybody's a DJ.
Yeah.
So, and I felt that. I'm like, dude, I'm like, I could probably be a pretty good DJ, but part of me is like, I don't want to because I'm going to get a bunch of hate. I'm like, oh, I'm just another person being a DJ.
Yeah.
But you don't do that with any other art form. Like, oh, you want to be an artist? Oh, just another artist. Oh, you think you're going to paint? You know, we already have a lot of painters, you know, or you don't do that with musicians. Like, you shouldn't pick up the guitar. We already have enough people playing guitar. Like, no, of course, yeah. Do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
And also, like, when people are like, oh, you can't break into the, you know, it's too late to make it in it. I'm like, no, it's like, absolutely there will always be new artists. There will always be new mediums. There's always, you know, so yeah, you just do the thing that you like.
I know that whole Deltron song in the year 3030, you know what I'm talking about? He's like, he has this album 3030, but there's a song on it called 3030, and the chorus is like, in the year 3030, everybody wants to be an MC.
Yeah.
In the year 3030, everybody wants to be a DJ.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I was like, he should have been talking about 2020.
Right. Yeah.
But like, it's like back to that whole like frequency thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we are a culmination of different frequencies or whatever, for us to express that as we probably should, because like in the words of Nikola Tesla, if, like you want to know the secrets to the universe, thinking energy, frequency, and vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's based on this. And so for us to have the means in today's society to take all of our favorite songs, our favorite sounds, our favorite like tempo progressions, all these things, and then put them into our own like mixes and our own, that's like pure expression that it's like, it only makes sense that we're going to get to a point where everyone's going to have their own song or their own music or their own like expression of frequency in that manner.
Right.
So
yeah. Have you I gotta look this up because I just started reading this again. Have you ever heard of The Creative Act by Rick Rubin?
No, I know who Rick Rubin is.
Yeah, so this is his book, and it's The Creative Act: A Way of Being. So my buddy Joe told me to read this book. But, dude, he is a fucking G. Like he's just so obviously he just has his fingers in all this different music, and he never even played music, but he he just like has his ear to the ground, or somehow he's like he knows what people want. But he's very creative, and so this whole this book is just he's teaching you how to open up to creativity in all forms. He starts out just talking about like creativity is everywhere and looking at it in whether it's a plant or it's a building or just a style that somebody's wearing and learning to appreciate it in all these tiny little areas everywhere. But he talks about how it's like we're the canvas. And the creativity is a gift that's given from consciousness, and so there's ways to like get yourself more receptive
and reality. What do you say was a canvas?
We are we are like the
So Tanner posted this thing, and he was like, and he said something, and it was very similar, but he said that we're the brush. And that reality is the canvas.
Okay, yeah, and maybe it's even the same similar, thing. Yeah, because maybe we're the vessel like that, but we're receiving. It's not we don't come up with it. It's like that creative thought like hits us, and then we express that into the physical realm.
Yes, exactly.
And he's like, have you ever had a creative idea and you didn't act on it? And then a couple weeks later, a year later, somebody else did it. He's like, that's because if we don't act on it, that consciousness will give it to somebody else. And they're going to keep giving it until somebody expresses that thing. I was like, holy shit.
It makes a lot of sense.
It really does. But it is like, he just has a very like, peaceful, soothing way of speaking. He's very gentle. He just and like just it's been good so far listening to it.
All right, I'll check it out. It sounds cool.
It's just I mean, I'm a creative anyway, but I get caught up in the same loops as most creatives. Like you still have like the writer's block. I'll have like I'm like, oh, I want to make something, and I'm sitting like, I can't get it out.
Yeah.
And then there's other times when I like
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, there's that. There's also the perfectionism angle where it's just like, and then the fear of rejection, you know, putting something out. This was a big practice in that. Like
I bet
talking and you know, like especially when I would get too drunk or say something embarrassing and then be like, fuck it, I'm putting it out anyway. You know, and just like just practice and being like, you know what, just it doesn't matter, like put it out.
Yeah.
That's been helping me a lot, I think.
This artist that I listen to, Flamingosis.
That's a good name.
Yeah. He's really, really tight. He's like disco-y, like funky, like produces a lot of his own music. It was actually like 3 or 4 days ago, he shared this track that he produced, and it was like, it was like 12, maybe 14 years or something. He was like, yeah, it's been like 12 years. He's like, since I decided to put this out, he was like, I really didn't want to. He's like, I literally just kind of like wanted to make music and I threw it together. Didn't think anyone was going to like it. He's like, but it blew up and that's what started my career. He's like, sometimes you just have to do it. He's like, you think that you're going to be like shunned or looked down upon. He's like, but if you never actually put yourself out there, then you're never going to know.
Yeah.
Or never even be able to like grow and expand because of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And like I was listening to some from McConaughey. He was on, have you ever listened to Modern Wisdom? This guy, Chris Williamson. He runs in a lot of those big podcast circles. He's huge, but and he's another guy who I at least look up to as far as his dedication to build the podcast, because he was not really anybody. He's like, I'm starting a podcast. And I am doing it all the time. And he's at like 800 episodes and he's massive. Nice. And he's had a lot of growth even more lately. He's like, it's crazy how it snowballs once you finally get that traction. But he had Matthew McConaughey on, and then they were talking, Matthew McConaughey was talking about how he's like, if you're going to do a thing, just dive in, like go for it. Yeah. Because he's like one thing I hate. He's like, if you half-ass it, you tried it a little bit and then you stop, it's like you would never know. And then you constantly wonder for the rest of your life, what if I actually would have really thrown everything at this? And that wondering will just, just crushes you. Yeah. You're just like, fuck, dude, what if I really would have pursued that? But I did it, I
bet that's a really good episode, because Matthew McConaughey has like a lot of insights. He's like, I've heard like little like things, like interviews and stuff with him. And it's like, the insights that he has, that he talks about, like the way that he like depicts these things, it's very relatable. It's like very understandable. You're like, okay, like you're like, that makes too much sense.
Yeah. Dude, communicators that can do that, where it might be something you already knew, but they just like communicate it in such a simplistic way. And you're just like, oh yeah, fuck, I love that. Yeah.
Well, that's like one of the biggest things with teaching people things is like, if you can break things down to the most simplistic way and get anybody to understand that means that you know that subject and know how to portray it better than most people, or like other people, you know what I mean? Like,
because if you're explaining something and you're just talking down to them, or you're just like going into the weeds, and you're like, if your audience doesn't understand it, then you don't really understand it.
I do that. I probably gave you way too much information about the Anunnaki thing. You know what I mean? Like, dude, it's hard not to like give you a lot of information sometimes. But
it's funny when you're like, well, do you know what this thing is? Like, nope. Yeah. No, but I had heard a little bit about Anunnaki and stuff. So that shit is very fascinating to me. I mean, I grew up very religious, and I know the Bible very well. So it's interesting when you hear other stories that tie into some of these main biblical stories, and you're like, oh yeah, like this could be why this was this, and like the flood, some stuff like that. It's very interesting to me, because I mean, I don't necessarily think every story in the Bible was like as it is spoke there. But it's still pointing to something that was relatively known or at least passed down in like verbal tradition, from somewhere. Like it didn't just come from nowhere,
And I mean, I think a lot of it, might have been true, but also a lot of it is kind of more
metaphorical,
where, and that's like the weird thing about even like the Bible or like certain types of religious or you're like a Gnosticism, like Gnostic beliefs or Hermetic beliefs, whatever, these like weird, like occult kind of like backdoor kind of understandings of reality and stuff. Sure. They have this term, it's called let those who have the eyes see and let those who have the ears listen. And so it's like, you could read the Bible as like a 13-year-old child and be like, I don't know what the fuck this is, just stories or whatever. And you could read it as like at 23 and you're like, okay, I've gone through a little bit of life and like this makes a little bit of sense. It correlates to these experiences. But then you can read it at like 50 and you're like, oh wow, like this means an entirely different, it's like a completely different understanding than I ever even read it, like got when I read it before. Right. And so it's like those things, it's like as you progress in life and as you go through experiences, it's like you're going to be able to interpret that in different manners. So
yeah, that makes sense. I was thinking of speaking of like those stories, when you said the Anunnaki then made the slave population and they made them too strong and in their image, it's like so like that phrasing is exactly how the Bible starts. Like God made man in his image, in the likeness of him created he them. It's like the verse. So it's very, I'm like, in the interpretation of the story that was passed down to these people, like that could still be telling that story.
And in the Bible they say like the Elohim, but the Elohim transfers to gods. It's actually God's plural. It's not just God's singular. And so
when I read this book called History of God, and it's written by this lady who just like dove into some of the old traditions, but there was like multiple rewritings of the first 5 books of the Bible through time. And it was, when it was first told, was multiple gods. It wasn't until later that they started shifting to one God.
Monotheistic.
So the original tradition was multiple gods. And that's why in like the Israelites coming out of Egypt, and then they are like fighting with, they would start worshiping another god because there was other gods that like people, and then eventually it shifted to one, and he was the jealous god Jehovah. And, so it's very interesting too.
The whole religious thing is like, it's so wild.
It is wild. I am still somewhat fascinated by it. I don't think about it a lot, but I do like when, like in that situation, there's also, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. And so some of those kind of teachers, they reference Jesus's teachings and they have a whole new perspective on it. They're like, oh, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And like when I was growing up, that meant like, oh, he's coming soon and we're going to go to heaven. And then, you hear an interpretation from them. They're like, no, that means the present moment. The kingdom of heaven is right now.
The actual verse is, the kingdom of heaven lies within me and lies within you. So he's saying that like we all are of God just as much as he was.
Right.
And heaven is the experience that we have. And so, and that's like, when I stopped selling drugs, I actually I was like in a really, like I was weirdly psychologically addicted to ketamine. And to the point where like, I don't know, it was weird. And like, I did it this one time, like I was doing fencing as well as doing finished carpentry work. And like, I got off work after me and my buddy were fencing this job, and we went down to the river. Like we stopped somewhere, had a beer. We went down to the river. We like did a bump, and it was right after like the Maui fires.
Okay.
And as we're like pulling up to the river, we're talking about the Maui fires and this direct energy weapons and all this like weird shit. And it got into this point where I was like in this weird low vibrational state.
Yeah.
And I like felt like my truck was like the wheels and the suspension was fucked up. It was like, and then we like pulled up. It's like at the veteran spot, and I pull up, and I was like, it's technology. I was like, technology is like the Antichrist. It's all technology. And I was like, get rid of all technology. And like, I was like, get in the river. I was like, the direct energy weapons, and like. It was weird. And so like we go over and my buddy's like, you need to chill the fuck out. And I'm like standing there and I'm like looking at the river, and it's like, dude, it looked yellow and it like oily, and it like had bubbles, and it was like it looked oily, like it was reflecting like weird colors and shit. And I was like, why is the river so gross? And he's like, dude, it's the river. He's like, it's the cleanest water. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like standing there and I was like, oh, and I had this epiphany. I was like, I've created my own hell. I was like, this experience in this low vibrational state, I was like, I have been like so like stuck in this like selling drugs, doing drugs, not being able to deal with real life without being high. Like I was like, I have created my own hell, and that's what I'm living through. And I had this pouch that had fucking $2,000 worth of drugs in it, had a half ounce of uncut cocaine, 10.5 grams of ketamine, and a half ounce of mushrooms in it. And I was like, and I threw it in the river.
No way. Yeah. Holy shit. And that was like when you ended?
Yeah.
Damn, dude. That's a good end story.
Yeah, for sure. Liberation, but at the same time.
Yeah, you're like, fuck, I could have had that too.
Yeah, my buddy's like, he's like, I almost jumped in the river. I was like, you probably should have.
Oh my God. Man, I don't even have anything close to that. That's pretty good. I've had a few like, we were one time actually, speaking of the river, we were down by the river, and we had both taken some acid. I was with my ex-girlfriend at the time, Taylor, and we had this shared experience where like we could make everything seem like bright and bubbly, or like bring it down like dark at the same time. And then we brought it up and I was like, whoa, that was crazy. And I thought that somehow like we created our own, like we stepped into our own like version of the world,
your own bubble of reality.
Yeah. And I was just like, dude, we got to keep exploring this. Like we got to get back to the house and like explore this. Like we can, like, I think we're able to like create whatever we want. And
you just gave me goosebumps really bad, because this is how I feel about this shit.
Yeah.
Continue your story, but I'm going to go.
I also have goosebumps, but I remember just the last part and it turned into this wild trip, but and I was like, dude, we got to go. And I had this water pack, and she's like, well, aren't you going to grab that? And I was just like, fuck it, we'll create a new one. And I just left it. And I was like, dude, I'm going to be able to create another. Stupid.
No, but you're right.
I was not right. I could not create another one.
No, you can if you're around the right people and you're in the right mindset. So this is this weird thing, and I've definitely been like coming to this realization that why we were able to build these monolithic structures in past societies, like when we are in a golden era, it's like we can use abilities that we have to do things that in this state of consciousness we think is unfathomable.
Sure.
And so like we were able, as a collective, we were able to like use frequencies that we emitted, or some type of device we created, like even just like some percussion device to match the harmonic structure that the stones resonate at, to levitate or whatever.
Right.
And so we were able to build these massive and so like the double slit experiment. Have you ever heard of this in quantum physics? So they've replicated this multiple times, where they will they shot they had this little like photon emitter that shot individual photons at a metal plate that had two slits, and there was a membrane on the back behind it, and they were trying to record the probability factor on whether it would go through one side or the other. Okay, when they would stand in the room and they would watch this, there would be two two slits that are like two dense like slit part, like whatever, and they would fan out. And then they left the experiment running and left the room, and then they would come back, and then there was a bunch of bands that were dense in the center and fanned out, and they were more dense, but then they like thinned out or whatever. And what they were able to determine was that that's like the particles behaving as a wave.
Mhm.
So it was like a wave going through both those slits, and then that wave expands out and has multiple like ripples, like peaks and valleys.
Right.
And so that's what it was hitting, and so that's why it created that pattern. And so they determined that everything is in a state, like a wave function of pure potentiality, until there's an observer, a conscious mind that actually causes the collapse of that wave function into physical matter.
Okay.
And so the whole like it's like what's the question? It's like if a tree falls in the forest and is anyone around to hear it, does it make any noise?
Yeah.
No, because there's no tree and there's no forest.
Right.
Because no one's actually perceiving it as a forest until they walk through it, and then that causes. And so we actually are all projecting the reality that we experience collectively from our understanding.
Right.
And so at a golden era of society, when we know more about all of this and how frequencies and how everything is like really works, then we can actually project a different type of reality experience.
Sure. And that's when you can do, or like
create water things.
Right. Yeah, create a new thing to hold my water.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like so or speaking of in the past, we create a like levitation of these gigantic rocks, which is one of the theories that they create something that we don't think is possible now, but we understand it differently.
It's because our minds worked in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it is gonna be wild, like just the shit that I feel like we're gonna see a lot in our lifetime.
Yeah, we're on the precipice of like the craziest change. It's like the craziest dramatic shift in consciousness that's ever been experienced on this planet.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, obviously, even with the evolution of technology, just seeing like the progression of what we're doing and AI and rockets and
Well, but why it's going to be such a dramatic shift is because we've thought that we had to rely on an outside like structure or device to do these things that we actually had the capability of doing.
Sure.
So just like those telepathy tape.
Yeah, I gotta listen to that,
dude. And so like I haven't listened to him, but that Ninjas Are Butterflies podcast, like the guy like goes into it, and it's like so children with nonverbal autism, where they're not able to verbally communicate or whatever. They've been doing these studies on them where they are showing like signs of telepathy that are like 90 to 95% accurate.
Yeah. And they're in different rooms and they like answer each other's questions and stuff. Yeah.
And I mean, it is tied to like, so it's like children, it's usually their mothers. They have like a deeper connection with their mother. And so they'll have like a mom in another room, and it's like a Faraday cage where it's like, there's no like signals getting out.
Yeah.
It's like whatever. It's like, and to try and eliminate the potential of say maybe them having a device or some video or whatever, you know what I mean? And they're able to like look at these things. There was one experiment where they supposedly it was like they would flip through a random book, and they would go to like a random page, and then they would look at a word, and then the kids were able to tell what page it was on and what word they were looking at. And it was like 90% accurate.
Yeah.
And then they also did it with like shapes and yeah.
And it's funny too, because I mean, I gotta listen to that. That's fascinating. But like, I mean, even just, I mean, we had this in religion growing up, but I mean, I've heard so many. I get what is it when it's just a one person's experience, not universally known.
Subjective.
Yeah. I mean, they use it in medicine. It's just like, well, there's this experience and this is working, but we haven't done the studies on it yet. But these are just, and it's like subjective. But regardless, there's you hear stories all the time of just, I just thought I needed to call you, and then somebody was just like, holy shit, you call this person. It's just like I was just thinking of you, or even like some scarier moments where it's just like somebody's having a bad time and somebody thinks of them.
Yeah.
Then they call them and that is like, holy fuck, like I needed to hear your voice. I was like struggling, all that there's all these moments that you hear about. I've experienced them.
I've had like experiences where I've telepathically communicated with people.
Right. And so that's, I mean, it's just like we kind of understand that to be a thing anyway, if we're open to those kind of things. You know, it's just like you. And so, of course, it's there. It's just like maybe we're only getting a glimpse at it, and then we're going to get more of it as, you know, as time goes.
Well, it's the experiences that I've had have been on substances.
Yeah.
But they've proven by doing like CT scans of humans' brains when they're like high on acid, and it's like there's more neurons firing and there's more hemispheres of your brain that are all connected, and so you're like your brain and your like consciousness is working at a higher level.
Yeah.
And I mean, the very first connection was out in Hagerman at this like weird water park right off the highway. It was like super weird, but there was like this big like basin or whatever, and we were sitting up on the berm, and it was big enough that like, and it was kind of almost dark. It was like dusk, and I saw my buddy like drop down the hill, and he started walking across the field, and I was like, oh shit, there's Nick, and I was like, watch this, and I like sat there, and I was like, Nick, and like in my head, I was like, Nick, and I like was like watching him. And I was just focusing, and I was like, and I said it like a bunch of times in my head, and then he stopped, and he was like, and there was no one around him. He was in the field by himself, and I talked to him later. He was like, dude, I heard someone say my name.
No,
and I was like, shut the fuck up, dude. Are you
so
serious?
Cool. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah,
I do think that it is true, like with acid, mushrooms, psychedelics, where you do resonate, or you're able to achieve all on more in that frequency or whatever. Yeah, it's really cool.
Pretty wild.
Dude, it's been fun, man. We've probably been, let's see what we're doing.
I don't know how long it's been, but
we're we're almost at 2 hours.
Nice.
Cool, man. We'll wrap this up. Do you want to chat about anything else?
No, whatever. It's been cool.
Yeah, dude. I fucking love it.
Yeah.
I've told myself, one of my like goals is to just pay the bills. Like, I mean, that's like the first level of like success, you know, and I don't want to like wait. I'm not going to be happy until then. Like, I want to enjoy the time building. Yeah. But like to be like when I'm just like, what do I have to do for work? I'm like, who am I going to chat with today?
For sure.
Oh, dude. I fucking love like just human interaction, talking to people and just interesting people. I had this whole idea, you know, sitting at bars and on cocaine talking to my friends, and I was like, we should be recording this.
Yeah.
And so that was like my initial, and I had already started listening to podcasts. I'm like, dude, I don't know why I don't do this. Like, I love fucking chatting with people.
It's like that Duncan Trussell show that he came out with, that cartoon or whatever. And
Midnight Gospel.
And he what is it called?
Midnight Gospel.
Yeah. And it was like, he was like, oh yeah. He's like, oh, everyone has a podcast. It's like interdimensional podcaster, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, that seems probably like where it's going.
Yeah.
Like, we're just going to like, we're going to develop these skills and these traits. And then it's like, what we're going to do is we're going to communicate, and we're going to put out this information, and people are going to grow and expand. And it's just like,
Rogan has this theory where, or I think he said it, but somebody was talking to him like, why do you think people are so interested in podcasts? And he's like, I think it reminds us of a time before technology, or it's like, because that's part of our history where like people would sit around the dinner table and talk for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And if you were like a kid, you were just listening to the adults talk. But or around the fire, like before the TV, before the radio.
Yeah,
it's like you just sit and listen to other people talk and tell stories and share information. So that's a part of our history. But like that all got lost with technology a little bit because people are just separating. So now it's kind of like finding that again.
Yeah,
it's like you're just sitting there listening to two guys talk, or three people, or whatever.
You also are like in an environment where you can tell that the individuals on the podcast are being genuine. It's like they're having just a genuine conversation. They're talking about life experiences. They're talking about what they know, what they don't know. It's like no one's afraid to ask questions or whatever. And so it's like it's a more like it's more trusting. You can trust these people, watching them have these types of conversations, opposed to listening to some like little like interview, like whatever. You're like, oh, blah blah blah, like answer this question for me, and you're like, well,
this is the prepackaged answer that I have for you.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, it's fun, man. Cool. Well, hell yeah, that's about it. Peace.
Nobody.